Whether at home or work, life is about relationships. Welcome to Small Change, Big Dividends with your host, Branch Isole. Small Change, Big Dividends shares steps, tools, and tips for personal career and spiritual growth. So please welcome the host of Small Change, Big Dividends, Branch Isole.
Everyone alive takes their first breaths and first steps in Life 101. In Life 101, we all experience life's 12 lessons that test our relationship actions and responses. We all experience stress, struggle, and conflict. We all suffer pain and loss. And we all have physical ailments and mental elements, and everyone alive innately thirsts for truth and hungers for love. So what's missing? What's missing in Life 101 that can be found in Life 101A? Well, what's missing is awareness and understanding of life's missing link. You see, we all know Life 101 intimately. We were born into it. But what is it about Life 101A that remains so elusive? To find out, stay tuned. Coming to you from deep in the forest, near the banks of the Ouachita River, you're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. Thanks for joining me again today. Each week, I share Mana'o with listeners from around the world. On Small Changes, Big Dividends, we talk about personal, career, and spiritual Christianity essentials for growth-filled living. Today, I'm going to share some small changes that can pay big dividends in your relationships and in your life. Because whether at home or work, life is about relationships, but it's healthy relationships that encourage and embrace growth. You see, in Life 101, our path is blurred by a veil obscuring life's missing link. And for this reason, we don't clearly see what our future might be. This veil is described in 1 Corinthians 2:14, which says, "Every person without the Spirit refuses to accept things that come from God, the Spirit of God, and considers them foolishness. They are unable to understand them because they are discerned only through the Spirit." You see, this is God's catch-22, and it's further explained in John 8, verse 47, which says, "You can come to God if you belong to God, but you can't belong to God unless you can hear God, and you won't hear God if you don't belong to God." You see, in Life 101, this veil is firmly in place. So spiritual cognition is held at bay by ignorance and by choice. Additionally, it's often hampered by religions trying to force feed their audiences a self-serving thought that you can only come to God by going through them, through their clerics, through their ecclesiastics. Perhaps this is why so many fall away from religions, be they church, temple, or mosque. Many wander instead to polytheism, even atheism. But when the veil is pulled back, the missing link becomes known, and we start to see unhindered. You see, we are each born into Life 101. And so in Life 101, our natural inclination is to embrace a "what's in it for me" attitude prior to every choice or decision. However, when the veil is pulled back, the missing link is revealed, showing us that we now have options with every question, every choice, every decision. Options that may have been missing since birth and are further blurred by our Life 101 experiences. But with this veil removed, truth is revealed. in our life, in our relationships, and within ourselves. You see, Life 101A reveals opportunities to transfer new awareness to our new behaviors, responses, or actions. So, what is this missing link? Well, it's simple. It's an active awareness of moral and ethical responses. You see, when our partially active spirit of origination is fully reactivated, we see truth everywhere, in every situation. And we can now choose moral and ethical responses instead of being held firmly in the grasp of our old pattern Life 101 responses. Now you may be asking, well, what are morals and ethics? Morals and ethics are God's character and nature in action. You see, it's a character and nature we innately possess because our spirit of origination, who we are in our spiritual essence, created by God, is truth and love. Awareness of morals and ethics comes from knowledge and wisdom gained by starting or restarting a spiritual relationship with God. When we reactivate our spirit of origination, we receive access to moral and ethical guidance. And by reactivating our inactive or partially active spirit of origination to its full cognition, our spirit that we came into this world with now operates at full capacity. When we don't reactivate it, it remains partially active because it operates in a vacuum. Our spirit of origination is rooted in right versus wrong, reward or punishment. You see, when we are born, we come as 100% spiritual truth and love. But when we are birthed, when we come out as a human being, our 20% spirit is redirected, and our 80% world responsiveness is implemented. So the missing 80% and its potential is now partially active, and our spirit only responds to right or wrong, reward and punishment, situations, scenarios, and questions. But why? Well, in Life 101, we embrace right and wrong by default. It's what we know. It's what we've learned. It's what we use in our daily interactions with people, events, and circumstances. You see, right or wrong is the operational response process that we understand from our earliest stages of behavioral cognition. About age 2, we start to understand the meaning and consequence of the word no. So, right and wrong is most often expressed by the actions of reward or punishment. And our automatic natural response to every question, to every choice, to every decision encountered in Life 101 is rooted in reward or punishment. As we grow, we constantly face with every choice or decision, in this situation, what's in it for me? A reward or a punishment? You see, in Life 101, our focus is on self. So we easily embrace the ways of the world, for self is the cornerstone of the world's ways. These are what we recognize by and through reward and punishment. The world's ways are the paths we travel in Life 101. So our outcomes always hinge on what reward we convince ourselves is best for us, even if we previously experienced failure, rejection, or disappointment in the same or similar situations. So, what's the benefit in Life 101A? Well, in Life 101A, every decision, every choice, every option is premeditated on knowing what's in our best interest. But how do we know this? Before we jump into action, before we respond, before we commit, how do we know ahead of time what will be beneficial or what will be in our best interest? Well, we know because in Life 101A, we now have access to life's missing link, the Spirit of God. You see, as a child of God, He always wants what's best for us. And this is the strength of life's missing link, which is now accessible for us to call upon whenever and wherever we need. Because we now have a spiritual relationship with God through Christ Jesus, His Spirit of truth now resides within our reactivated spirit of origination. And we now have access to every solution for any problem or issue we may face in our daily interactions. You see, in Life 101, we struggle to find answers. In Life 101A, we already possess the solutions for every problem. Now, you may be saying, Branch, how can this possibly be? Well, because we now have God's Spirit active within us, the Spirit of truth, we recognize truth and love in every situation. So we now know the moral and ethical response to every question, every issue, every problem, every situation. And by responding morally and ethically, we always make the choice that's in our best interest. You see, keeping out of holes of adversity that we knew so well in Life 101 is now a thing of the past. Sound crazy? Sound far-fetched? Well, it's only because you haven't experienced faith and belief in action. Your Life 101 experiences have made you numb to any other possibility. But why is this? Well, in Life 101, we are enmeshed by unforeseen calamity, even if we experience negative fallout from previous or similar situations. But when we remove the veil and reveal the missing link, our new spiritual reactivation, we are assured, no matter the outcome, we will be blessed and protected. Why? Well, we no longer make multiple attempts to put round pegs in square holes, because we now recognize the truth in every situation, in every choice, in every decision or option. Life 101 issues and troubles have us looking over a precipice with doubt as we grapple with stress, struggle, pressure, and conflict, causing us to dig deeper the holes of adversity. But a reactivated prodigal spirit of origination enables us to now see outcomes before we choose what action to take. Now, I'm sure you must be asking, Branch, how can this be? Well, it can be because we now possess intimate knowledge of truth's application in every situation, in every event, in every circumstance. So now the question becomes whether or not you choose to remain in Life 101 or not. And that answer is up to you. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to look at teaspoons and shovels. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. I'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends. I'm your host, Branch Isole. Have you ever known someone who constantly blames others for their failures, for their troubles, their shortcomings, or problems? Someone who makes every excuse imaginable why their life is unfair. Well, we all have, right? Look around. They're everywhere. People in our families, in our social circles, at work, at play. Excuses, blame, falsehood, fake answers. The truth is, every aspect of daily life is permeated by and with false statements or lies. We lie to others. We lie to ourselves. We lie to avoid accusations or recriminations. We lie to avoid responsibility. We lie to get what we want. We lie to avoid what we don't want. We lie to get ahead or get an edge on our competitor. We lie at work. We lie in our relationships. We start lying as soon as we're able to understand the concept of right and wrong. You see, we embrace fabrications or excuses. They become ours as we become comfortably enveloped within their misery. We start with a teaspoon and soon graduate to a shovel. And then we keep trading up in shovel size. Well, today we're going to put that shovel down for a few minutes. How many choices or decisions do you make without thinking, without any real analytic reflection? By asking yourself, what's in it for me, before jumping into action. You see, most of our choices are answered by automatic, habitual response, not what's really in our best interest. We respond consciously or subconsciously, focused primarily on the goal or thought, what do I get out of this? Now, if I decide this way, if I choose this path, what will be the outcome for me? You see, our old pattern behaviors, our old pattern responses, and our old pattern decisions are always fallout focused. What do I mean by this? Well, it's not so much about the choice before us as it is the result or consequence of that choice. Meaning, what will this consequence, outcome, or fallout do for me? You see, we're offered a choice, but our focus is on the outcome, usually an immediate or short term result, or we wonder how a particular consequence may help or hinder our immediate or future goals, ambitions, and desires. We abandon the power of choice in pursuit of the outcome. And if our perceived or anticipated result doesn't align with what we want, we may totally ignore the power within the choice. It's this what's in it for me question that's our natural state, our natural inclination, our natural desire. What's in it for me is our human nature, if you will. You see, every choice has two options, an affirmative and a negative or rejection. And this is the spark initiative or pivotal moment where power of choice resides. And it's from this moment that comes the act, action, or response that will ultimately lead to a consequence or result. So we analyze the possible outcomes and their place on a scale of what's in my best interest, while we forget the power is in the choice. This is why power resides in the choice and not in the consequence. And by recognizing power is in the choice, before we act, we put consequence in its proper position, which is second. So the consequence won't dictate the choice if we understand that the power rests in affirmation or rejection of a specific choice. Let me give you an example. I go to a party and I drink too much. Now I have three choices of how to get home. I can drive under the influence, I can hire a cab or an Uber, or I can catch a ride with somebody at the party. I think about my dilemma. Now, I've driven home before after drinking too much, so I know I can make it home, right? Well, can I? What are the potential outcomes or consequences if I drive? Well, I can get home. I may get stopped and get a ticket for DUI, or I might be involved in an accident. Here's the problem with driving under the influence in this scenario, or any aberrant behavior for that matter that threatens my life or my livelihood. Every time I roll the dice and tempt fate by driving inebriated, I run the risk of the odds being stacked against me, with pending negative outcomes that can affect my entire future. If you've ever been to Las Vegas, you're aware that they didn't build that city letting gamblers win. The odds are always in the house favor. Well, the same is true in life. You're rolling dice against a system designed to test, tempt, and challenge you up to and beyond your breaking point. You see, the next day after the party, life will go on, whether you're home in bed, hungover, in jail, or in the hospital, or maybe in the morgue. Life will go on. Your future, on the other hand, may or may not. You see, your entire life, your entire future, perhaps your career, family, or health hang in the balance, and they may be compromised by one miscalculation of choice and consequence. A simple cognition of what's really in your best interest is always there, and in this case, it gave me two other viable choices the night before to get home safe and sound. You see, the power is in avoiding adversity. Let me share another example. Do you think God exists? Yes or no? That thought, that belief in his being or not, is a choice. And from that choice comes actions and responses. Here's another. Do you think your pet, if you have one, or your child, if you have one, can be taught certain behaviors? Now, your choice of how to answer can lead to certain behaviors by you that can help develop or hinder your pet or your child's response to change. Now, before we get too far in the woods, just realize the choice is in not the consequence. The real choice, the real power is in the choice itself before we ever act. You see, choice allows you to say yes or no. Consequence only allows you to take a bow or clean up the mess. Perhaps you've heard a podcast where a guest shares their story about overcoming adversity. These were once known as Horatio Alger stories because each had a theme of perseverance, grit, and gumption, while striving for success rooted in a dream, a goal, or an ambition in the face of adversity. These stories all had a change of outcome for the hero or the heroine. And behind the veil of the story's action, there was always a moral or ethical lesson. Perhaps you've heard of Aesop's fables or the Canterbury Tales. See, we can go all the way back to the ancients, to philosophers and soothsayers, to oracles and sages, to find stories, fables, and tales that entertain and delight, and most importantly, teach. They were all morality plays. Why? Because one purpose of life is to discover and then use the value of truth as our own, as our compass rose, pointing us to love. First to the love of God, then to the love of others. You see, when we have God's love and follow truth, we recognize moral and ethical options in every situation as we face life's daily struggles. So when you hear a podcast host or guest share their How I Overcame Adversity story, what do you think? These gems can be entertaining, but the fact is each story is the teller's tale, and their circumstances are not necessarily the same or similar to yours. You see, many of today's podcast guests try to express in 30 or 40 minutes what may have taken years, even decades, to accomplish. That's why the real value is only to the storyteller, not to the listener. While these recalled steps to glory may entertain, or a particular story may leave you with feel good vibes, warm fuzzies, or appreciation for what was experienced, after the episode ends, each listener goes back to their own life. Your story is your story, and your challenges are yours to face or not. So here's the key for our show today. Instead of attempting to overcome adversity, it's infinitely easier to avoid adversity altogether. Stepping around holes is always easier than digging ourselves out. It's this action of avoiding adversity where the power of choice actually exists. We often forget for every choice we make, there's a consequence, large or small, with short term or long term impact. And every choice contains consequences of reward or fallout. But what do we mean by consequence? I mean, everyone knows the word, but what does it truly exude? A desired outcome that may be in the forefront of our thinking, so much so that we can overlook short or even long term negative effects or outcomes. But even more important, we may forget or ignore how our choice may affect others in our lives. And this often leads to repeating a cycle that allows or even encourages us to jump in a hole and start digging. And then, to make things worse, we dig deeper and deeper and deeper until it's a hole of disappointment, despair, damage, even possible danger. And if we remain in that hole of repeated negative behaviors for too long or too often, even our perceived escape mechanisms may become harmful, more dangerous, perhaps even more deadly than we ever expected. Why? Well, many people face a choice or decision only seeing the anticipated outcome they desire. They are laser focused on the goal they want or expect, to the exclusion of all other possibilities, even if a similar choice in the past was costly. They look at their new or next choice through eyes that only see what they want. And in many cases, the more we want, the more blind we become to any possible negative results. Now, this can be a very tenuous way to live. So, the easiest way is to step around holes of adversity by first recalling previous choices and their outcomes. So, if you see mental red flags lurking in the shadows of a new choice, you need to pay attention. We're going to take our second break. When we come back, we're going to look at animals and men. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Boldbrain Media, TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. I'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends. I'm your host, Branch Isole. People, like animals, are creatures of habit. And when our behaviors become comfortable through repetition, we may start to experience each in its own comfort zone, even if that's a place of comfortable misery. We want what we want, and oftentimes the more we want it, the less likely we are to see the spectrum of other possibilities, good, bad, or ugly. So let red flags be your waving, be your beacon, shining light on your next or new possible or pending choice. See, one of the advantages of focused thinking is it requires and encourages critical analysis. Now, this once well-practiced skill can become less acute with more reliance or total reliance or assisted reliance by technology. Now, don't get me wrong. The world of technology has opened up everyone on the planet to information and knowledge previously unknown, or at least less guarded or cloistered. Technical devices now allow information to be unleashed and unfettered worldwide. You see, we live in a world, in an era, in an age where we can literally access available knowledge on a device held in our hand. But like a coin, even technologies have two sides. On one side, we have access to the world. On the other, the world can have access to us, and at what cost? Let my virtual assistant out of the door. What's the price of interactive isolation by withdrawing from physical interconnected presence of others? Or by eliminating face-to-face contact and personal interactions? You see, many today rely with confidence on what they're told, shown, or encouraged to believe as true through technology. They have total faith in what they see or read online and therefore believe it to be true. Information, misinformation, disinformation may appear true on its face, and without regard for deeper look, background, or fact checking, may in fact be believed as true. You see, one element of intelligence that sets humans apart from every other species is our mental ability to think critically and employ rational decisions that can be shared verbally or communicated in writing to others. When our days are filled with only streaming technology devices, we can start to lose that human edge. Critical thinking and analysis skills allow for, encourage, and as implemented face-to-face interactions still allow for more depth in our responses and our nuances. Without critical thinking or analysis information, we can start to believe statements of misinformation, or worse, propagandized disinformation. That's not in our best interest. You see, falsehoods from information, misinformation, disinformation can affect us as individuals, as members of groups, tribes, neighborhoods, communities, nations, even as a world citizen. And this relinquishing of critical thinking and analysis skills can blur the focus we need to make good, sound choices, decisions that are in our best interest, that result in consequential outcomes for us and for those that we care about. So, recall of previous choices and consequences, along with any red flags associated with those experiences, should be our first line of defense, our first response to guide our new or next choice. These are simple yet important ways we can ensure our choice options are available when we face new or similar decisions. This practice allows for us to see into the future for application in the present. Let me share a real life example. In the 1960s, the University of Texas football team, led by Coach Darrell Royal, succeeded with a tremendous powerhouse wishbone offense running game. After each game, the sports writers would ask Coach Royal why his offense never threw the ball. He'd politely pause and say, "When you throw the ball, three things can happen, and two are bad, for both your offense and your scoring." Now that's the practical, secular side of our discussion about choice. But those with reactivated spirits can use spiritual strength to anticipate future consequences or outcomes as the edge for their success. It's an edge many people don't have, simply because they choose to ignore its possibilities. For our prophecy segment this week, in a recent episode, we talked about the judgments or plagues in the coming tribulation years. If you're becoming a student of prophecy, you're discovering there are many identical elements of both Old and New Testaments. We find this pointed out in the book of Revelation, where John describes correlations between the Egyptian plagues in the Old Testament and the trumpet and bowl judgments in the New Testament. In the book of Revelation, John describes several bowl judgments that align with the plagues in Egypt that were called into being by Moses. So here's a few of those that are related from the trumpet and bowl judgments that are reminiscent of the plagues in Egypt 3,400 years ago. Egypt saw them then. We will see them in the future during the tribulation years. Bowl number 1 reveals that boils or skin lesions that will be brought about by locust-like creatures that plagued Egypt will also be in our new times because they're described as the 5th trumpet judgment. Bowls 2 and 3 describe blood or the poisoning of both salt and fresh waters. Both Old Testament Egypt and New Testament tribulation use frogs as symbols and disseminators of evil. In the trumpet judgments, in the first judgment, describes falling hail. The 4th judgment describes scorching sun. And the 5th judgment describes darkness. You see, prophetic awareness is our key for preparation. Knowing what events may be on our horizon will at least prepare or give us pause to realize the validity and the veracity of God's word for both believers and non-believers alike. The trumpet judgments described in the first half of the tribulation years will be brought about by climate, cosmic, and man-made disasters that will get the world's attention. But in our ignorance and defiance of God and His Word, many will ignore the devastation that they witness or experience, thinking it's just life being life. And yet, we as a world are specifically warned as to the exact nature of the calamities ahead. If the consequences of the trumpet judgments weren't enough to get our attention, those who refuse to believe, those who refuse to hear God's words, those who refuse to accept His offer of spiritual redemption will suffer an onslaught of God's true wrath in the last days, or the final 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation. When the bowl judgments are encountered by an unbelieving and dissident world led by Satan's apprentice, the Antichrist, some will wake up and understand what's happening. Some won't. And those who don't will become followers of the Antichrist and worshipers of Satan. How do we know? God tells us in prophecy what to expect. We're going to take our final break. We can come back and talk about next week's program. You're watching and listening to Small Changes, Big Dividends on the Bold Brave Media TV and Talk Global Network. I'm your host, Branch Isole. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. On Small Changes, Big Dividends, we discuss personal, career, and spiritual Christianity essentials for growth-filled living. If you know someone who could benefit from today's show, please share it with them. If today's show has been interesting for you, please give us a rating and review. And to know more about my work, I invite you to visit my website, branchisole.com, or my Substack and YouTube channels, Branch Isole. Today's show has been sponsored by Manao Publisher, publisher of my books and ebooks, available at the website or Amazon. Join me next week for Obstacles. And in May, I'll be launching a new podcast called Patient Zero. It will be available through my Substack channel with replays uploaded to my YouTube channel. I'd like to invite you to become a free subscriber at branchisole.substack.com. Until next week, keep growing and be in the world, not of the world.
What if you could discover a deeper spiritual truth, free from the constraints of organized religion? Introducing the Spirituality Series, a 5-book collection that offers a fresh, honest approach to spirituality. These stories are not about religion, they're about truth. For seekers, searchers, and those who have fallen away from traditional beliefs, this series is a guide to spiritual relationships that transcend doctrine. Explore 5 powerful themes: meaning, purpose, expression, fellowship, and choice. Each book reveals new ways to understand and embrace spirituality in daily life, without the influence of mainstream religion. Whether you're searching for deeper meaning or simply curious about the role of spirit in your life, these books will guide you to a fulfilling spiritual path, one that is grounded in the teachings of Jesus Christ, but free from the limitations of any specific faith. Experience spiritual growth through personal stories, practical insights, and poetic reflections designed to awaken your soul. Start your journey today with the Spirituality Series. Free from religion, full of truth. Get your copy today.
This has been Small Change, Big Dividends. When you're ready for healthier, more successful relationships at home or work, Small Change, Big Dividends is your show. Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.